on the traditional homelands of the Swabash Coast Salish Native people. The Puyallup people have lived on and stewarded these lands since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. We recognize that this land acknowledgement is one small step towards true allyship, and we commit to uplifting the voices, the experiences, and histories of the Indigenous people of this land and beyond. I'd like to remind us of one of the covenants we agreed to in our Covenant of Right Relations, which we adopted in 2015 at our annual meeting. This is it. We welcome all who enter our congregation. We listen for and reflect back each person's deepest dream for being alive. We warmly greet newcomers, seek to know each other, and find common ground. This is something that we can do through our stories, which is this month's theme. We are gathered here this morning as a house full of stories. As Unitarian Universalists, we honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish the earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damage to relationships. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived here this morning, you belong here. So please repeat after me. It is good.
It is good.
It is good to be.
It is good to be.
It is good to be here together.
It is good to be here together.
I'm Amy, and I'm part of the Transforming Mystery and Wonder team. And before I read these opening chalice words, I want to just acknowledge that we hold all in our hearts a couple of our team members who are suffering from COVID and not present. And that's Beth White, Sylvia Paza, and Jeff Cole, who's in Mexico. Thank you, Catherine. Yay, welcome, 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 team. So our chalice lighting words are from Reverend Dr. Breeden. We tender this flame, opening the book, turning to a page yet to be written, opening a story yet to be told. May we fill this fresh page wisely. May we write a new story into being. May we together inscribe this page with hope. So please join me in singing Come Sing a Song with Me. This is number 346 in your gray hymnal.
Sing a song with me. Come sing a song. Come sing a song with me that I might know your love. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me that I might know your love. And I'll bring you home when home is hard to find. And I'll bring the sun of love in the winter time. walk in rain with me. Come walk and pray with me. Come walk and pray with me. That I know your mind. And I, when home is hard to find, and I'll bring a song of love and roses in the winter time. Come share a rose, come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when home is hard to find. And I'll bring a song and rose in the winter time.
Thank you, Kat. So these opening words for this service today are from our Transforming Mystery and Wonder team. We gather as a house of stories. We weave together our individual tales into a common stories, our loneliness lessons, and the ever-present web of our oneness is revealed. Let us drink from the stories that sustain us all.
So Amy already said that this service is brought to you by the Mystery and Wonder team. And I actually was going to mention also that we do have 2 members of our team home with COVID and not feeling very well. So, so today you're going to hear Catherine Sullivan, me, and Jim Packwood read their stories, those who are absent. Catherine is going to read Beth's piece on story. Jim Packwood is going to read Jeff's story, and I will be reading Sylvia's story. And we're going to try to bring their voices into this space. First, we want to introduce our belief that stories can be a vehicle for spiritual exploration and growth. The spiritual power of story resides in its ability to connect us to deeper meanings and profound emotions. Stories can inspire personal transformation and provide a sense of connection to something larger than ourselves. It can lead us to introspection and a deeper understanding of the human experience. So today we invite you into some of our stories, and we hope that they provide spiritual fuel for you. So first, we're going to be listening to Amy's story.
As I reflected upon life stories that have meaning for me, they're connected with dogs that I've adopted. My previous dog, Wilson, was a 12-pound Shih Tzu, and he came to live with me and Alan when he was 8 years old. Wilson had been living in the nursing home of my friend's mother, who couldn't keep Wilson anymore. He was our first ever small dog after years of owning Labradors. But as my friend pointed out when I asked why she liked small dogs so much, she said, Amy, they poop less. They eat less, they travel well, and they sit in your lap. Wilson fit that description to a T, happily napping in Alan's lap most days until he died. Wilson lived 7 more years with me until age 16, when cancer and a raging eye infection was just bulging. It was really awful. Sent me to the vet in June of 2023. It was time to end his life, but he didn't resist. He didn't exhibit any sadness. It was just the end, his last breath. Because dogs are great teachers about living now, Wilson didn't lose the will to live like my husband Alan did. Dogs connect with us through play, through petting, grooming, feeding, walking, barking. And then it's over. They don't suffer about the past. They don't suffer about the future. They don't suffer about the end of life. They don't have judgments. They don't have expectations. The reality Wilson showed me is that what existed yesterday disappeared already today. That is what dogs have taught me about the nature of life and death. This feels profound, to accept fully life right now, that this will be the end, my last breath into the mystery. After Wilson died, I couldn't bear to try to replace him. Finally, after a year, I began wanting another dog. I missed that fun-loving presence in my home and living with a reminder to be here right now. So I filled out yet another pet application, all 6 pages of questions, for the rare opportunity to adopt a small dog in this region. It's not easy. Finally, late July, Jamie with Smidge Tree Rescue in Covington replied that yes, she had 3 small dogs that were adoptable. I wanted to meet all 3 and to bring Thomas, my partner, with me to see what the dog's reactivity to a man could be and to choose the one that really connected with us. We set a date to visit. I packed dog treats. I got permission from Jamie to offer the treats that I'd brought, and the first to eagerly seek his treat was a full Pomeranian. He was a true fluff, low to the ground, but quickly took the treat, barked, and then jumped on my leg repeatedly. More, more, more. The second one was a miniature Chihuahua who quickly jumped onto Jamie's seated lap, pointed his nose to the sky, and barked. And there was no airplane, no noise, no. I consulted with Thomas, who agreed. 2 down. Maggie, this 5-year-old Shih Tzu Pomeranian, had been barking at the nearby horse, but then trotted to the middle of the pasture and rolled on her back, exposing her belly, wiggling back and forth. Oh my God, so cute. We each held her, petted her, and soaked in her puppy energy and her ease in just really being with us right in that moment. We were convinced that Maggie was the one, finally. She's had another profound lesson for me since I've had her since August 1st. How to play fully. She's taught me how to repeatedly toss her toy down the hall, and she brings it back within seconds, ready to play again. She's taught me how to spin her around and around and around while she has that toy tightly clamped in her mouth. She's taught me how to chase her around the dining room table going, I'm gonna get you, Maggie. And how to hide her toy while she sniffs or she barks frantically for it. She makes me laugh until my tears flow. We have potentially many years together. She's 5. The small presence whose gifts to me of living now and how to play fully are huge. Maggie is, as my father would say, a keeper. She's a wise teacher too. Thank you.
So I'm speaking Sylvia's words, and I think you'll see a little bit of her Buddhist self showing through. A really big light bulb lit up for me years back when a therapist told me, "You are not your thoughts." It had never occurred to me that thoughts are really just stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the world. Thoughts are an interpretation or perception of what we experience, and they don't always represent what is true about the world. We may have an awareness that these thoughts are just stories. For example, when someone doesn't respond to an email I sent, and the story I tell myself might be that they're angry with me, which may be completely untrue. Therapist Lori Gottlieb calls herself an editor of people's lives. She says, the way we can narrate our lives shapes what they become. If we can change our stories, then we can change our lives. She says, you can let go of the story and live your life, not the story you're telling yourself about your life. She calls that letting go of your story, unknowing yourself. This unknowing can open us to change, transformation. For the first time, I actually stepped back and saw my thoughts as stories that I had created based on my perspective of reality, and that everyone else had their very own version of reality that they also thought was the truth. This realization helped me understand the years of arguments in my previous marriage that could never be resolved because each of us thought we were right. I could see how my daughters could have such different perspectives of their childhood and how the stories I told myself could make me feel that I was not enough. Gottlieb explains that we can be imprisoned by these stories, past or present, not realizing that these bars in front of us are actually open on the left and the right. And we could walk around them if we chose to change by thinking differently. I sometimes call this choosing to look out a different window when I get stuck in a bad place. This change in perspective creates a change in attitude. There's a shift in the narrative, in the story I tell myself, which in turn transforms my reality. Looking my past, I don't know if I want to use her words here. I will. Shitstorm. Looking, these are her, I'm her voice, I guess. Looking back on my past shitstorm of divorce, empty nest, and menopause, I can tell a story of my resilience, strength, and acceptance rather than the story of shame, disappointment, and pain. The Buddhist practice of mindfulness teaches us that you can have a thought and observe it. You are not your thoughts. You are someone that thinks, just like you are not your emotions. You are someone that feels. I like the image that you are not the fish, you are the pond. All the thoughts and emotions are the fish, but you are the pond. Your story is not in charge, you are. Stories can be powerful, but don't have to own you. Instead, we can look for the deeper meaning in our story, which can inspire personal transformation. Observe the stories you tell yourself and see if it's time to look out a different window.
Didn't want to get out of it. My name's Catherine. I'm speaking for, who am I speaking for? Beth. Jesus, you can tell I get nervous. I'm going to try to breathe my way through this. And I'm glad that Beth can join us. I hope I do your story justice. In considering how to explore and write about the expansive topic of story, I leaned into music, poetry, and personal relationships. Stories are part of the everyday fabric of my life, whether I'm opening a novel, listening to music, or walking with a friend and talking about our lives since our last visit. Today, questions abound. How do we want to make use of story as a congregation? How can we deepen our connection to spirit as well as one another through story? What is in story that defines who we are as Unitarians and as human beings in this troubled world? The following are bits and pieces of stories' impact on my life over the years. The first, quite recent. Over the holidays, when Rick and I drove to Spokane, Puff the Magic Dragon played on the radio. Of course, I sang along with the beloved music, but couldn't quite finish as I was overcome with tears and emotions. This story of lost innocence touched something deep in me, pulling me back to my own childhood as well as my daughter's. 40 years after this song first came on the radio, I am still moved deeply by a story of a boy and his imaginary friends' adventures and the loss of childhood wonder. One song, one story, touching my heart and spirit as I reflected on being a mother, as well as seeing small children grow away from their innocence. Stories do that. They can connect us with timelessness, the power of goodness, beauty, mortality, and vulnerability, as well as being alive together. As Padraig Otama states, stories open us to the possibility of breathing where there had been little previous. We need stories for their tired spaces in the world, stories of life that bring us together to belonging. Part of me as a mama belongs to the story of Puff the Magic Dragon. I second that. I became a newcomer to poetry when a friend hosted her 60th birthday party over 20 years ago with an invitation to bring and recite a Mary Oliver poem. I was stunned in my research how Oliver can portray with deep reverence the beauty and story of the natural world through her observations. I'll read to you 5 a.m. in the Pine Woods from her 1990 book, This House of Light. I'd seen their hoof prints in the deep needles and knew they ended up the long night under the pine trees, walking like two mute and beautiful women toward the deeper woods. So I got up in the dark and went there. They came slowly down the hill and looked at me, sitting under the blue trees. Shyly, they stepped closer and stared. From under their thick lashes, and even nibbled some tassels of weeds. This is not a poem about a dream, though it could be. This is a poem about the world that is ours, or could be. Finally, one of them, I swear it, would have come to my arms, but the other stamped sharp hoof in the pine needles like the tap of sanity, and they went off together through the trees. When I woke, I was alone. I was thinking, so this is how you swim inward. So this is how you flow outward. So this is how you pray. In this short poem, Oliver wrote of the preciousness of life, of the wild world at our doorstep. If only we will slow down, walk outside silently to listen and observe. This is how you swim inward. This is how you flow outward. This is how you pray. We are offered a deeper meaning of life through her story. Mary Oliver quickly became a favorite poet for me, a spiritual guide, opening my eyes to the sacred surrounding Mother Nature. It is not an accident that I often refer to Mother Nature or the outside as my temple of worship. Whew. I know that Mary Oliver revered spirit in her time outdoors, witnessing, listening, imagining, and most importantly, belonging. I want to speak to relationships and story. Throughout my professional career, when I was a member of a committee or a board with other therapists, we always started our meetings with check-ins, going around the circle to share a bit of our lives since our last time we met. With the Mystery and Wonder Group, we have practiced this same tradition, always doing check-ins before business. Basically, we tell each other the story of our more recent days, allowing tender emotions a place to rest and be held. It's a beautiful intimacy shared among us. We have risked vulnerability and met one another with deep listening, in essence, holding each person in loving attention and acceptance as we check in. I believe sharing our stories and check-ins has strengthened our bonds as well as our effectiveness in doing the work of creating Sunday services. Finally, joys and concerns exemplify the power of story. No surprise, this is my favorite time of our Sunday service. We welcome stories, joyful or not, to be shared and held by the congregation. Members' willingness to trust, speak to the large group, inviting a silent acceptance of their joys or concern, carries us to a closely bonded congregation. Often, individuals reach out to those who shared concerns. Relationships are strengthened, connections deepened. This is the spiritual work of community. The mystery and wonder of stories continue each and every day in our relationships, our musical traditions, and in poetry. We strengthen our bonds through loving, listening, and being present for other stories. We advocate for social justice through the stories we hear in our community and beyond. Powerful emotions emerge, connecting us not only to one another, but to the larger community. This is beautiful. This is precious. This is being alive together. Thank you, Beth.
Hey, everybody. My name is Jim Packwood. Gosh, the stories that we've heard today have been so moving. So I'm going to try to do justice to Jeff's story. And Jeff, if you're online, thank you for writing this. It's beautiful. And it's an honor for me to be here reading to you all. I'm very happy to be here. So these are Jeff's words. My first stories were told to my best friend, Mickey, a scruffy-haired, stiff-tailed, eyeless, stuffed Scotty dog under the dining room table while my mother peeled potatoes on the oilcloth table cover above. Mickey, I rode my trike to the very edge of the root cellar today. Mickey, I had a chocolate ice cream cone today. After kindergarten, I began to write little stories in which Mickey was the star, which I shared with my parents, both writers themselves. Daddy had written lyrics for songs by his composer friend Jeffrey O'Hara, and for whom I am named, and dozens of poems praising God. My mother wrote moral stories for Christian women's magazines, so my little stories were acknowledged and appreciated. When I was in high school, I was dumped by my first serious girlfriend. I was shattered. After watching me mope around for a week, my mother suggested I write my thoughts and feelings in a journal instead of annoying everyone in the family. I have journaled ever since, and it is through journaling that I meet myself and others can meet me if they choose. How many of us have kept a journal for more than a year? I'm not talking about a calendar or diary, although even that can reveal insights into the writer's story. I found my mother's daily calendar book after she died. Her entries, even a few words, told the story of her small life in a nursing home for anyone who could decipher them. Chicken for lunch today, too salty. An ambulance came for that old lady down the hall. A journal, however, is a detailed record of memorable events, including emotional reactions, thoughts and opinions, associations, any or all of the above, in sequence, but not necessarily daily. Some of my annual journals had maybe 6 or 10 entries for the whole year, but they were important to me. They tell a meaningful story or make a point. Taken together, they are the history of life, history of a life. And more importantly, they form a connection with the life experiences, the stories of everyone who hears or reads them. The great encyclopedia of humanity is the sum of all our stories, past and present. My early journals tapped out on an old Hermes typewriter and saved in a shoebox have disappeared over the years, as have the floppy and not so floppy disks from early journals. But here are a few examples from my earliest existing journals dated 2001. April 10. Mid-morning, as I sat in the sunshine to begin sorting and processing the bag of donated books for the Zen Center's library, a task I'd been procrastinating about for nearly a year, I noticed in passing that I felt happy. Then caught myself and more deliberately and consciously acknowledged the feeling. As I write, I realize that for me, happy and content are synonyms, a new awareness. Especially interesting, given that I had awakened just a few hours earlier, feeling physically worn and emotionally grumpy. April 26. I received an email from a tennis player I didn't recognize saying that Andy, tennis buddy of about 15 years, had died of a heart attack on Thursday night. I talked to him Thursday morning and had an email from him at 9:45 that night. It all seemed so surreal. The message from a stranger with no details, the suddenness after which I just talked to him. And he and the guys had probably played Saturday morning, his age in the early 50s, that I couldn't process it. And I felt unsettled for the rest of the day. Despite an energetic and satisfying activity, finally, at the Saturday night dance, with the excellent band, KGB playing, my mood improved. The dancing was truly delightful, with lots of my favorite waltzes and partners. June 19. Whenever I'm moved by an experience, touched by the beauty of a flower or a sunset, feeling great empathy for a fellow being, whether human or of another species, or experiencing deep feelings of joy, satisfaction, or contentment, I can remind myself that the Buddha nature in me is connecting with the Buddha nature in that of which I'm experiencing. And that is unconditional self-love. In other words, loving that in me which resonates with the source of all energy is loving myself, a part of that energy. Sounds abstract when I look at it in words, but at the time it was vivid and powerful, and it will be a portal for learning unconditional self-love if I remember to acknowledge it. We all have a lifetime of stories, happy, sad, or amusing, from our long past to the recent, important or trivial, whether spoken or written in a journal or expressed in a song. When shared, our stories meet the spoken or unspoken stories of the readers and hearers, which forms and strengthens a bond with others and their stories, a net of connection, which holds us, binds us, and reminds us we are one.
Let's hold a moment of contemplation and worship in a generous and abundant silence.
I had a hard time picking a song to sing for this part, but mostly because my whole life is stories. And it's what I do. It's the thing that I do. And I really, I picked one demonstrated to me at an early age that an amazing, utterly surprising story can come across your path, even in, say, the Greyhound bus station in Spokane, Washington in 1979, or thereabouts. And I called it True Story because nobody would believe me otherwise, I figured. I wrote it, I should remember it. If I didn't know better, I'd have said you were old and alone. In your bags and on your back were everything you own. Patience was worn, your temper was short. Stepped down slow and heavy off the Greyhound from New York. didn't know better, I'd have said you were angry and bored. Rose-colored glasses were more than you could afford. Voice was rough and ragged as a gravel pit, and you sat like a stone in the cold bus station making love to your cigarette. But what do you know? I could have sworn all you were was written down in flesh and bone. What do you know? There's no uniform to show me where you stand between the gutter and the throne. If I didn't know better, I'd have said there was nothing you loved. Your face was set like a tightened fist inside a leather glove. Your eyes were cold and shallow when you turned your head. When you told your story, oh, you could have struck me dead. From the coast of the Pacific to New York and back with no one to meet you and your world in paper sacks. An old wooden woman on a long, long way to see Rudolph Nureyev dance in the ballet. You know, I could have sworn all you were was written down in flesh and bone. But you know, there's no uniform to show me where you stand between the gutter and the throne. If I didn't know better, I'd have said your world was complete in a city block of parking lots, garbage and concrete. I'll never know what price you paid to give yourself the chance to go to New York and see the master dance. What do you know? Why was it such a surprise that all the best of you was not all that met my eyes? What do you know? Now somewhere on the street, a graceful memory walks on clumsy human feet.
Thank you, Kat. We're now going to pause our recording as we prepare our hearts for joys and concerns.
It's a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all there is a love holding us. There is a love holding all. There is a love holding all. We rest in love.
You know, we're so lucky to hold our stories. And I think one of the things that's, Ted, you've reminded me, I feel so much as I'm trying to hold so many stories right now. And so my way of dealing with this is a commitment I have to do an act of kindness every day. That to just be moving in that direction. but it's a hard time for everyone, I think. As members and friends of our community, we commit to supporting our congregation. Financial resources help us to pay our speakers and staff. And I'm sorry, I'm feeling support our social justice programs and maintain our building. So please support VIUU with your pledges and offerings so that we can contribute to the broader world and be a vital community. Our congregation engages beyond our walls for peace, social and economic justice, freedom of belief, and protection of our planet and its inhabitants. Once a month, we contribute to an organization that's regional, national, or international that aligns with our values, but this week's offering will be for our beloved community. So if our greeters could come and get the baskets. And so as we receive our offering, let's join in singing We Give Thanks.
That's a little too low, excuse me. One of these days I'll get the right key for these things. We give thanks for this precious day. All gathered here. Away for the time we share. Love and care. We give thanks for this precious day.
Our closing reading is in the words of Richard Wagamis. In the dark depths of a long winter night, spirits slumber too, and they allow their stories to be told. These are the storytelling moons. Elders and storytellers who have been given tales to carry speak softly, reverentially, and the people hear them. Share your stories. Fill cold nights with the warmth of your connections, your relationships. Hear each other and be made more. That's the power of storytelling.
We extinguish our chalice with these words. May we listen to each other's stories as pathways to our spiritual growth, in connection to something larger than ourselves, in contribution through service, and in compassion for ourselves and others.
Thank you to Catherine Sullivan, our tech wizard and our reader for Beth, and Jim Packwood for reading for Jeff. Kat, of course. And set up team number 4. They're the ones who prepared our treats for today and prepared Lewis Hall for this service. Please join us for refreshments following our announcements. If you have an announcement to share related to a VIUU activity, please come up and share it with us. And afterwards, we'll join in listening to Kat play another piece. I'm Kim, and we put a survey in the newsletter, and I'd really like it if you check that out. It's about the community fund, where we want to see those monies go and how we want to see those allocated. So as we move into stewardship, we'll be moving into asking for more money, but we've got this pot of money, $6,500, that we need to do something with. So next week and for the rest of February, there'll be paper copies of that survey if you don't have the ability to access the newsletter. Thank you.
Catherine again. Feels like I've been talking a lot today. So January is done. It's hard to believe. So we're done with stories, no more stories. And next month, I'm just kidding. Next month is February, and the theme is inclusion. And so the first Sunday, next Sunday, we're having a visiting UU minister, Justin Almeida. This is the second time he's spoken for us. The second Sunday is Reverend Victoria, always a winner. The third Sunday, the social justice group is putting it together, and we're having Nikki Welks, the executive director of Journeyman, come and speak.
Oh, yeah.
And then the fourth is the board. So that's not to miss. So I hope to see you in February.
I'm Earl, and this is an invitation to this August group. Whether you realize it or not, about 15 to 20% of our members also are currently now or in the past have been Rotarians. And the Rotary Club of Vashon is trying to set up an epic day of service on May 17th. To that end, we want the community to get involved. So this Thursday from 5 to 6, there'll be a meet and greet hosted by the Vashon Island Rotary Club at the Vashon Wine Shop. And those who show up who are not yet Rotarians will have their first round on us, starting at 5 o'clock on Thursday, the 30th at the Vashon Wine Shop.
Happy hour, Earl? That's a good man. It's one of the other four food groups. Instrumental. It was written by Liz Carroll in Chicago, who's a magnificent person. But it's called Island of Woods. I felt that I was so privileged to be able to. I'm so glad I had that. Yes. No, where the hell is that? Where did it go?
Oh, yeah. Princess and the Frog.
Yes.
Isn't that the funniest song ever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
I've
gave
sung
me
that song
so
for
much
years.
joy. It was like you had one breath and you were gonna